Oslo.
Jason, I keep telling you, we're in Moscow.
Oh, Moscow, right, exactly.
I mean, we came here to meet with Vladimir Putin and our handlers.
Where are the mules? I've heard a lot about Moscow mules.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're here, because everyone, according to this Angel Urania.
Ah, right.
You know, I only appear on Russian media.
Exactly.
And I'm obviously, you know, all that we're doing here is just directed by Vladimir Putin. So we came here to Moscow to meet him.
We're going to need subtitles.
That's true.
Well, this is a very interesting city, I have to say.
It is. I think, actually, yeah, we're going the right way. That's the direction, that's the old, is that the Opera Building? I think that is.
That thing with the dome on it?
Oslo University, I think. You walk that way, you get to the Grand Hotel.
Now they have these scooters around which are just strewn everywhere, not unlike what I've seen in Washington, D.C. Let me just make sure we're not over-modulating here. It sounds a little hot on the audio. Check 1, 2. Should be okay. So, do we want to discuss any of the details of what we've been doing here?
Yeah, I think let's get it a little bit out of the heavy traffic. And I think, well, we can go that way. You're going to go downstairs and watch your...
Right.
But yeah, here in Moscow, it's really odd that we haven't been able to find Red Square.
Right.
I mean, it's supposed to be a pretty big deal, that Red Square.
It's red and blue square if we're in Oslo.
Keep bringing that up, Jason.
Now, there's an awful lot of electric cars around, Charles. We were told by one of our associates that the government is subsidizing the purchase of Teslas and electric other vehicles, BMWs and whatnot.
Well, the one thing that will not work well is electric cars in, say, Ethiopia, where there's no electricity.
Well, that was the plan of the Clintons, to open a electric car dealership in Ethiopia.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, we're now getting very close to prime real estate here in Moscow.
Right.
And watch your step.
Yep, I'm trying to avoid. I think the problem might be that the microphone is practically in my mouth. Well, I enjoy when we go on these road trips. I think it's a good opportunity for people to check out a foreign city that they might not get the opportunity to see otherwise.
Nice sun.
Yeah, beautiful.
Amazing thing, it's only about, what is it, like 1:30 or so here, and already the sun is going down.
Yeah. It's
been up for 2 hours.
Isn't there some name for that, like the land of eternal darkness or something? Yeah. Midnight sun, right, that's it. But that's not this time of year.
No.
So Charles, while we're here, there's an amazing amount of stuff going on back in the United States.
Indeed.
Do we want to discuss that at all?
Sure. I mean, for the last, I guess, 3 days it is, the Democrats have been conducting their prosecution, in quotes,
right,
in the impeachment trial in the Senate. And initially the reports were that it was going to be a massive audience. And it was, I guess, only 11 million people the first day or something, pretty low number. And it's descended into epic silliness because I think, as you rightly point out, most trials involve crimes.
Right.
And so allegations of crimes. And this whiz-bang, group of wingnuts has rushed impeachment articles through the House of Representatives that not only do not allege high crimes and misdemeanors, they don't even allege crimes.
Yeah.
And yet they wasted, 3 whole days in the Senate, of Senate time,
right,
taking people off the campaign trail. And it just doesn't, you put that in contrast with all the real business that could get done that isn't being done.
Right.
And the typical way in which the House and the Senate normally conduct the people's business, which is to go on vacation.
Exactly.
So this is quite a pretty area. Actually, we can reveal that we are, in fact, not in Moscow, but in St. Petersburg.
Well, now, that's the National Theater?
It is.
I've definitely got to do something with this microphone here. Hang on a second.
Okay.
that might be better. There we go. So this is the National Theater over here.
It is.
And so do we want to discuss where we've been and the types of meetings we've been doing? Or?
I think in general terms we can.
Why don't you do that so I don't...
Okay. Well, let's maybe walk a little bit
Sure.
down this way. Just so maybe over... Why don't we go into the center of this park? And
Sure.
that way we'll be a little bit further away from the road noise.
Yeah. Sort of juggling.
That, by the way, you remember, is the City Hall.
Oh yeah, let's look at that for a second, because
Sure.
that's quite an odd building. I always like to check out these different government buildings and structures and things. And there's often some unusual symbology there. You can see these scooters just strewn about just as they are in Washington, D.C. I'm surprised there's no abandoned children outside this restaurant today.
Yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yesterday when we were here, there was just a baby stroller. It was freezing and the baby was outside alone, shrouded in some sort of pelt.
And the mother was inside,
boozing,
having a frosty.
Exactly, an adult beverage. So this is City Hall. Is that what it is?
I think that's City Hall, indeed. And you can see there's a ferry there in the distance. You can see it's actually kind of pretty.
Yeah, I mean this building looks like it reminds me of a jail. It reminds me of the MCC in Manhattan. Perhaps they know where Epstein is.
Actually, we could. Remember the store over there that has those hats?
Oh yeah, we should go get one of those.
We'll have to buy a hat.
Viking helmet.
It's kind of tough to take that back on the plane rather.
This is good for people to see this kind of, unique square here, or whatever this is.
Get a little light off that building. You see that? Sunlight on the windows there.
Yeah. In the distance down there. Yeah. So now, what do you make of that clock, Charles?
Looks a bit demonic to me.
Does it? So they've got all these sculptures outside these buildings that, I was with David Hawkins in London just a few weeks ago, and we were examining the Eric Gill sculpture of Prospero and Ariel outside the BBC, which there have been calls to remove due to the controversial nature of the artist. I don't know, is it controversial even? It's sort of, there's no controversy. If you're a rapist, that's it.
Unless you're Bill Clinton, in which case you're venerate.
Good point.
This, I think, is where they award the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, really?
Inside here.
Yeah, we should go in there and ask them.
I don't know that you can do that. That looks like a security guard to me.
Yeah, they don't want you going in.
They may not want you filming it.
Well, from the outside?
Yeah.
Well, we'll let them tell us that. Interesting, for
anyway,
sure.
so maybe to answer your question, it says you're a little better.
I know, it's plugged in, so that's a bit annoying. Well, I have a backup with me in case that problem persists. It was at 100% when we left. So it's the cold, I think, is making the battery not work well.
So yeah, we're actually here in Norway, and this is Oslo, the capital city. And our regular watchers, viewers, know that Norway is one of the biggest contributors to the fake charity syndicate known as the Clinton Foundation and many other names and addresses.
Surprisingly few people in Norway are aware of that, though.
Exactly. Well, they suppose they try to hide it.
They're becoming aware of it now.
So for several years, we've been working with different people who are connected here in Norway and people in America who are of Norwegian descent, posing the question, WTF?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Why are you supporting a foundation that technically has never been organized lawfully anywhere in the world? To the extent of around 100 million or more US, exchange rates move a lot, so
I don't know that we've really had an answer to that, the why.
Well, I think I have experienced in my life that it's quite common for groups of Europeans to sort of relish traveling in clubs and packs, and they see one country doing something, the other country says, well, why don't we do it too if they're doing it? And so I think there's a certain amount of that.
Peer pressure?
I also think that the history of the Clinton presidency needs to be thought through a little bit. That one signature achievement, which I will give the Clintons credit for, is the Good Friday Accords.
The what?
Good Friday Accords.
Good Friday Accords. I don't know about that. What is that?
That's the Northern Irish peace that was negotiated by Bill and others, and that was done under the auspices of the UK. And then on the other hand, a failure was the attempt to broker peace in the Middle East following signing of the Oslo Accords. And all that work was done right here in Oslo.
Right.
So it's likely that the Clinton team retained the ties that they developed when he was president.
Yeah, let me go to this side. I think it'll be easier. There we go.
Okay. And
Yeah, exactly.
so when time came after Bill had left, once he pardoned Mark Rich and was a pariah initially,
Right.
and his domestic speaking assignments dried up, many books recount the fact that he went immediately on an international tour all over the place, possibly including here in Norway. And then began to develop work both fighting HIV and AIDS and fighting climate change with Norwegian grants
So
and
it's
other.
kind of a strategic move that maybe a lot of people didn't know about.
Yeah. So this,
Just want to make sure we're not too loud here. It sounds like it's clipping a bit. What have we got here?
so this is the famous Hard Rock Cafe, which is not a product of Norwegian.
Although the building looks nice.
Yeah, but Hard Rock, I think, is one of the early international locations was the UK for sure, because I used to go there in 1976 and 7.
Did Jagger own it or something?
I thought it was it Mick Jagger? I thought it was a Beatle.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. And we're looking down, this is sort of the prime shopping, old business area, and I believe we're looking down to the left is the Grand Hotel, which is a very fancy hotel. We should walk in that direction. Try not to get killed by a bicyclist. And these we were told that these metal pots with the plants in them are remembrances of the shooting attack.
I thought they were to prevent a truck attack or something.
No, they were planted in remembrance of that horrible attack that took place here.
Remind us of that.
I think from memory, and my memory's hazy on it, I thought it was either a sniper or a bomb attack or something here in Oslo.
But then wasn't it a matter of firearms experts saying that there's something about the official story that made it impossible to read what they said?
Yeah, I've not really read into all the details, or I don't remember them.
I'm sure our viewers will be familiar with that and can recall the details of yet another false flag type of operation where they claim it's one thing when it's actually another.
This is pretty.
You know, I don't know if you caught this, Charles, but your favorite musical performer, Eminem, has come out with a new music video that
Peanut flavored?
yeah, no, he's depicting the Las Vegas shooting.
Really?
And basically reinforcing the mainstream narrative that it was Stephen Paddock, even depicting Paddock doing the shooting, the cops breaching the room. I found it very exploitive, and I didn't like it at all because
weren't you were one of the very first people to go out there?
Well, I don't know about very first, but certainly I was there only a few days after it happened. Yeah, met Laura out there and everything.
That would be the great Laura Loomer?
Yeah, running for Congress. Laura Loomer for Congress. Hashtag Laura Loomer for Congress.
Should be hashtag kick some ass.
Yeah, I really do hope Laura wins and gets in there and can kind of speak some sense to them. I'd love to see like an octagon steel cage match of Laura Loomer versus Adam Schiff.
So here we are. This is the famous Grand Hotel on the left, which is, I think a 5-star hotel, and I believe that's the Parliament over there.
Yes, it is. It's interesting. You know, these smaller countries like, I guess in Washington, D.C., I don't know, it just seems a little bit more compact, kind of.
Yeah. So we're here at a time that's quite interesting in that just before we arrived, the coalition government, the way this is a parliamentary government, so parties get together, and you can govern with less than a majority, but parties get together and they form a coalition, and then they parcel out the ministerships. And just before we left, a party called in English translated as the Progress Party, but we learned in Norwegian it's really the Leaping Forward Party or something like that. It's
Step forward, yeah.
It's not a communist party, it's not a hard left party. It's a party that has been asking for some time, many years, that the vast amounts of Norwegian aid, which is I think $3.4 billion a year, which is a lot for a country that only has about 5.5 million and change people.
What's the GDP? Or you hate GDP, I thought.
I don't remember. It's
but that sounds like a
billion.
Oh, well,
roughly, and maybe a bit less than that. So that party elected to leave government because they were dissatisfied with the prime minister's decision to allow an ISIS widow to come back in ostensibly with a sick child. And there's some question now whether the child, in fact, was actually sick. But there's no question in the minds of the people in the Progress Party that they had it. So they left the government.
Well, let's elaborate, because they clarified for us that it wasn't so much that they left the government. They're still in Parliament. They basically abandoned the executive branch.
Right. They left the governing coalition. Let's put it that way. So they're now. That's a good fact, because when they were in the governing coalition, they had to sort of do compromises, and if they wanted to push a certain agenda, and
compromise, Charles,
and they wanted to, and others didn't want them to do, they had to basically shut up. And this now frees them up to ask some of the very tough questions that they have been to date reluctant to ask. A separate development which just happened, and it's fantastic, is that Boris Johnson, in one of his first moves now, as he approaches Brexit, which will happen, I think, effective next week, the 31st, was to call for an immediate overhaul, review and then overhaul of the way in which Britain dispenses its aid, which is about, for a country that has more like 70 million people, 65, 70, Britain doles out about 14.5 billion pounds, which is called at roughly $18 billion, $19 billion. So it's got many times the population, yet it spends only, call it 6 times the aid. So that gives you a sense of how significant Norway's aid programs have been to date.
Yeah.
And we found through our, this is I guess our 203rd broadcast, and our second international broadcast, or?
Yeah.
We found that there are really substantial questions that need to be asked and answered concerning how foreign aid is doled out. I mean, it sounds great that you're giving aid to Haiti. Now, 10 years later, after no one wants to tell us what really happened to the $10 to $13 billion in aid. And does that aid money actually reach the country, or is it used to pay local businesses, for stuff that they can't sell, so they can distribute it into these foreign countries? So, I mean, I think there's every wish on the part of people across the spectrum, political spectrum, to help people who truly need it, even if they're not inside whatever country is involved. But there should be tougher questions asked about, okay, there's an earthquake in Haiti, we spent all this money, how come there are no new roads and hospitals? How come there's no electricity?
And isn't it 10 years since all the Clinton money went to Haiti, and it's a good time to maybe take stock of what has happened to that money and what has happened to Haiti as a result of the money.
Right.
Every Haitian person I've ever spoken to, without exception, despises the Clintons.
Right, and it's also, I think, a fair question. I mean, Bill Gates, I believe, is actually a smart guy, but occasionally even smart people say really stupid things. And one of the things he said is that his goal, which he thinks is achievable, is to eliminate poverty.
Like killing everyone?
Killing every human, yeah. But
solved.
But the reality is there's going to be natural disasters, be they earthquakes, volcanoes, accidents, whatever, war. It's just going to be a fact of life.
Hillary Clinton, public apperances.
Right, that's right.
It's
Swan
like a natural
dives.
disaster.
9/11. The asphalt swan dive.
It wasn't her ass's fault.
So
or maybe the counterbalance.
That's right. That's right. Vertigo. But there really should be, it seemed to me, if responsible nations want to get together and say, well, all right, let's get ready for the next earthquake. Let's have a foundation set up to deal with this that's done lawfully. And so then when the earthquake happens, instead of having the money go into Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, Chelsea's pocket, it can go into a real foundation with real bank accounts and a real legal structure that is then governed, not by the Clinton cronies and the Clinton family, by people you can't trust in a crooked accounting firm or two or three, but by really objective, independent people drawn across party lines and political interests to actually do right. To rush in, be ready to think through, you know, in this type of country that's located in a northern climate, we're going to need this type of stuff. Southern climate, this type of stuff. You know, if it's an earthquake, this type of stuff. If it's a flood, another thing. You know, and we should be able to have these contingency plans done, and we should be able to have, you know, responsible ways of doing it. Instead, it's been ad hoc.
Right. And another thing that one of our contacts had told us is that, you know, as part of Scandinavia, right? Norway is, there's this whole, but there's a real kind of cultural attitude towards the environment and ideas related to climate change. And, you know, we've been told, I mean, there's just an amazing number of electric cars around that we've been told they're subsidized by the government. You're seeing one Tesla after the next. Someone told us that they're basically 50% of the cost of it is subsidized by the government. There's free parking, free charging. Now, I'm actually just noticing this while we're talking. This Aon Corporation, isn't that a huge insurance company that lost a lot of people on 9/11?
I think you're right. I think you're right.
That's pretty interesting that that's right there. And then here's Parliament right here. I'll tell you, Charles, some of these international corporations, wait, what's going on there at Parliament?
We can get closer.
Let's go take a look. But yeah, so I mean, again,
it's a welcoming party, Jason.
Right. There was a bit of a question as far as, you know, the departure of this Progress Party and their attitudes towards things like the oil industry here in Norway, which I understand is their largest industry, and kind of a national move towards ending that industry.
Silliness. So you take a country like Norway, which until they found all the oil and gas was a very poor country, right? And now Norway, on a per capita basis, is one of the most generous countries when it comes to foreign aid, because industries like their oil and gas industry have built so much capital and wealth. So, you know, the obvious move of the socialists, because most socialists are economically illiterate, is let's take the most vibrant part of the economy, let's kill that. You know, then let's take the rich people and steal their money.
What would the effect on the country be?
Oh, it would be disaster. Huh. Maybe we should move away from
this. Yeah, because I don't think we're going to be able to understand what they're saying in Norwegian. And, but it's interesting.
Let's go see what this is.
It's interesting for people to see how many people are here.
What is this?
Sorry, do you speak English?
5G.
Oh, it's a 5G rally. So I guess that's something that a lot of people are concerned about, Charles, 5G.
Yeah, you know, I'm so impressed with this brochure that I think I'm going to throw it out.
That's not environmental.
Do you want it?
No, but it's interesting to see that they're
protesting it?
It doesn't look like much of a protest. Maybe they're just sharing information about it. I mean, it seems to be a pretty universal concern, the growth and deployment of 5G technology.
Somebody in a Mickey Mouse coat.
Maybe another thing that we could talk about.
Should we go around or something?
I feel like something might be wrong with this microphone. It's sounding a bit odd. Anyway, yeah, let's go around. I think another thing that's interesting in this part of the world about 5G technology is, isn't Nokia or Ericsson one of the major competitors with Huawei for 5G infrastructure?
Well, yeah, Nokia is Finnish and Ericsson's Swedish. Absolutely. I think there was up until several months ago, there was an expectation that Huawei was going to be the dominant provider. In fact, that 100% of all 5G equipment was going to come from Huawei. And then friends we know of came over here and discussed the risks of that.
Yep.
And recently, the recent decision is that the Huawei market share is going to go from 100% to 0.
That's quite a shift.
Which means the people who are involved in that are not going to be having any kung pao chicken in China anytime soon.
Now, what is this here? Do you know? Carl Jonas, Gate 25.
Probably just these are just old-style office buildings.
It's nice for people to see some of the architecture around. I mean, I presume this is a city that a lot of people in the United States, maybe many of our viewers, will probably not visit.
So now, Jason,
who's this guy over here, Charles?
Which guy?
Some fat guy seated.
Which guy?
I'm going to get yelled at now for calling him fat. Hey, listen, fat.
Yeah, listen, fat.
This is Christian, of course.
Christian Krog.
Yeah, a lot of people named Christian here. Well, and is this
Krog,
another
actually.
abandoned baby, or the baby seems to be with the parents?
No, there's no baby. It's, I think, that person.
There we go. Well, but it's nice that, you know, it tells you a lot about the culture here. I guess it's a low crime kind of a situation that people are feeling.
Low crime or high fool.
Right.
So, Jason, I brought you all the way here because I know that one of your favorite restaurants, you can't go by for, you know, half an hour without thinking about how much you'd like to have a sausage McMuffin.
No.
And right over there is the McDonald's, which is actually why we came here, to do a comparative taste test. Bosnian McDonald's versus Norwegian.
Did you eat at McDonald's when we were in Bosnia?
I cannot tell the truth on that one. I can't disclose where I may have been when you were doing something else. No, I did not.
So yeah, it's a bunch of interesting buildings, I would have to say. So why don't we talk a bit more, Charles, about the impeachment? I noticed that Rudy Giuliani has started a podcast, which is pretty interesting. I think a lot of our viewers are going to be interested in what the former mayor has to say as the president's personal attorney. He's come under attack. And
well, you had some great statistics on that.
I think he had, I saw his YouTube channel. It was the first video that he's produced, but I believe he has 21 million subscribers already, which is
amazing.
That is amazing, because I've seen other people who are sort of close to as famous as the Yellow Vests.
Ja till livet. What is this?
I
think, you know what this is? Is Yes to Life. This is a pro-life country.
Well,
because you know, the pro-life march happened on Friday.
Right. That, and Trump spoke at that, and I saw a lot of people had signs that said he was the most pro-life president ever.
Should we ask them what this is about? Or
Sure.
Do you think we'll get in trouble?
No, go over there and I'll stand here, and then we can keep you on camera.
Pardon me, do you speak English? Yes. Is this pro-life?
Pro-life.
Uh-huh. Interesting. So did you see that, I'm from America, did you see that President Trump spoke at the pro-life march?
Yes.
We're doing, I do a podcast that reaches hundreds of thousands of viewers, and over there is my colleague. Would you be willing to talk to us about this?
Yes. We get some these we are getting from America.
Ah,
Yes.
good. So this gentleman, this is a pro-life organization,
Yes.
and I was explaining, Jason, I think you know that President Trump, for the first time, a U.S. president, spoke at this rally,
Yes.
the pro-life march,
Yes.
and it received an amazing support in our country.
Yes.
People in our country
Yes.
are not afraid, but depending on where you live,
Yes.
you know, are reluctant to be out and support
Yes.
life.
Yes.
So, but it's nice to see that you're doing this.
Thank you, thank you. We got the free abortion law in Norway for 4 years ago, and we have killed 700,000 Norwegians in
700,000?
Yes, 700,000.
And you have how many now? 5.3 million? How many total people in Norway?
Yes. We got the free abortion from 1975 and 78. And from that time we have killed 700,000 in Norway.
Right, but I'm just relative to your total population in the country today, of all people in Norway, is about 5 million, 5.3 million living Norwegians?
Yes, it's about 6 million.
6 million, so
Yes.
700,000 out of 6 million, that's
Yes, yes.
a big percentage.
Yes.
What do you think the people of Norway think of President Trump?
I see that in the Norwegian media, Norwegian broadcasting are very negative. Cruel, shame, great shame. Yes, yes. And we are very happy that he is so very clear, both to pro-life and to Israel, for instance. So we understand, you know, that the Norwegian media is very red, socialist, and they are very aggressive to our pro-life here. We have stayed here one Saturday all over the year, and then we have been here for 18 years.
18 years, wow.
Yes,
You
yes.
personally have been here 18 years?
Yes.
Every
Wow.
Saturday.
One Saturday in the month.
Per month.
Yeah, yes. I mean, think it is important to stay here and talk with people who want to talk with us, and we think that over time we can give a witness.
Well, I admire your persistence, and thank you for doing this, and
Yes.
thank you for coming and
Thank you.
speaking. Is
Thank
this
you.
for me, or is this?
Yeah, you can take it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, you see the internet address here, so that is the
Okay.
e-press now we use. So we bought it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you
nice
very
day.
much. Yeah,
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck with your movement.
Well, it's interesting, Charles, for us to go around and kind of see what's going on here in the main square,
He's probably a pro-ISIS guy.
fighting.
There seem to be lots of different. What's this one?
I don't know. Let's ask the guy.
For Buddha.
Why don't you ask him?
Sure. Do you speak English?
Yes,
A little. What is this about?
it's against nuclear weapons.
Against
To
nuclear
say
weapons.
no to nuclear weapons means it's an organization here in Norway.
Good. Well, we do a podcast from America. It gets a lot of viewers around the world. Would you want to tell our viewership what your movement is about?
I'm not so good in English.
All right, so I'll help you as you're trying to think about it. It's a movement to eliminate the use here in Norway or internationally of
Internationally,
of nuclear
because
weapons.
the UN has made a treaty to abolish nuclear weapons. And 2 years ago, in 1917, 3 years ago, the campaign called ICAN, that stands for International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, they got the Nobel Peace Prize here in
really?
Oslo
Huh.
3 years ago.
Does Norway have nuclear weapons?
No, we don't have it here in our country, but we are a member of NATO, together with the United States and many, I think it's 29 countries, Western countries, and they have a strategy to use nuclear weapons, as you may know.
I see.
And this treaty from the UN was voted for in 1919, and now there are countries countries are ratifying and signing these treaties, because each country has to ratify, and when 50 countries have ratified the treaty, then it will become international law.
I see.
And the United States would never violate international law, right?
No. Of course, no of the nations having nuclear weapons have signed this treaty yet.
Right.
But it's a process internationally to get it to stigmatize.
Stigmatize?
Is that the word? As to make it impossible to have nuclear weapons. I mean, we have to build an opinion.
Well, let's hope they're never used again. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So, sir, good luck to you. Stay
you.
warm.
Yeah, it's cold.
It's a nice
today.
scarf. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very
Have
much.
a nice day.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, that's a noble cause. I don't know.
You know how you have to do that, Jason. I mean, I'm totally the wrong track.
What do
You
you
got to
mean?
get some nuclear weapons.
Right.
You got to threaten people
Yeah.
that unless you give up your nuclear weapons,
You're going to nuke them.
You're going to nuke them.
Right.
And you can trust somebody like that to give up the world's remaining nuclear weapons.
Well, I mean, that's just it. It seems like a country that doesn't have any would
Right.
not really be taken too seriously by countries that do.
Right.
I mean, I agree with what that guy's saying, but it's sort of like putting the toothpaste back in the tube, right? Once
Right.
they're invented, I don't know that they're ever going to go away. And I mean, we're talking about a lot of countries that don't trust each other. The United States, Russia, China. I don't know that they would ever get rid of them. And I mean, frankly, the things that Adam Schiff is doing in the Senate right now with this whole impeachment trial where he's just villainizing Russia, who, I mean, frankly, what?
Nice lights.
What has Russia done to the United States lately that's so terrible that Adam Schiff blames them for absolutely everything?
Well, I think you have a beef with Russia.
What is that?
The Russian dressing on a Big Mac.
Oh yeah, exactly. I never eat it. But seriously though, I mean, I think it's pretty irresponsible political gamesmanship that Adam Schiff and the Democrats are engaging in to just. I happen to be watching Sean Hannity, which I don't often do. But just this morning in the hotel on YouTube.
So he's here too?
Yeah, he's here via YouTube. And he had put together a clip where they just cut all of Adam Schiff's mentions of Russia from this like filibuster-esque marathon session in the Senate. And it was like Russia, 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 Russia. Like Adam Schiff has just gone mad with the Russia hysteria.
Well, I think,
let's let that woman pass with the noisy suitcase.
Sure. I think the theory the Democrats, if they have a theory here, have is that they're gonna have all this footage from the trial in an opposing Senate chamber, and they're gonna have the pencil neck and listen to Fat Nadler making all these wild accusations, and they think that then they can pump out ad after ad, and that's gonna make the voters think less of Trump. I actually think this is a case where it'll be very difficult to make headway with anybody but, sadly, the small percentage of Americans who are clinically insane. Those people may buy off on these ads, but instead what these ads are going to do is make Listen Fat and Pencil Neck look even dumber than they already see.
I agree with that, but it's clear that it's, Adam Schiff sees this as a moment where he intends to kind of build the rest of his political career on this. He's obviously a guy who would aspire to becoming a senator. There's a big difference between being a congressional representative in the House and a senator, right? In terms of your influence, your amount of money you can steal.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got big shoes to fill. I mean, Dianne Feinstein is going to accuse Donald Trump and others of supposedly colluding with Russia when she had actually a Chinese spy working on her payroll for 20 years and didn't know about it.
Well, now you're getting to the heart of it, though, Charles, because these are people who want Donald Trump out of there because he does seem to be trying to make good on his promise to drain the swamp. I don't know that he's got the best plumber in William Barr, but if he's successful in doing that, people like Dianne Feinstein and people like Adam Schiff, who received money from the murderous meth kingpin Ed Buck, are very possibly going to be investigated for some of these relationships, and they could be in a lot of trouble. And I think that it's clear to our viewers that that's the motivating factor behind this. But I really am astounded by some of the intelligent people I know who don't see that, who are parroting the same kind of CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post talking points where prior to the trial they say, well, it's a foregone conclusion that Trump abused his power. And I mean, these are the same people who think that it's totally fantastic that Barack Obama destroyed Libya. That wasn't an abuse of power. Libya hadn't done anything to the United States, and they decimated a functional country and turned it into a disaster.
Where there's an open slave market, open air slave markets as we speak. Like, this could be if we were in Libya, which we're not, we could go over here and watch them auction off, some Norwegian slaves.
Will that be our next trip to Libya, Charles?
That could be your next trip.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
You've got friends there.
Right. Well, the Moriartys had suggested, I think, they had been invited there, and they had suggested to Dr. Corsi that they go to Libya, and Dr. Corsi wisely declined. I don't know that they'd make it out of there. What do we have over here, Charles?
Which way? This way?
This thing here, it looks like a church, I guess.
I don't know. It does seem like a church for sure.
It's giant.
Do you want? Shall we walk
Yeah, let's take a
that
look.
way and go back?
Well, I don't know what else is around here that's of interest. But back to the Giuliani podcast, I was pleased to see the former mayor. Oh, is this a police officer?
No.
Oh, it looks like it.
Security guard.
That's interesting. A lot of people speak English around here, but I was pleased to see Rudy Giuliani sort of.
Look, here's Gerald Nadler.
Oh yeah, look, I didn't realize that. Since Schiff and Nadler. But I was pleased to see him doing what was, in many regards, almost like a Ross Perot style education of the public.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a revolution, Charles. I mean, the fact that someone like Rudy Giuliani can put together a broadcast like that could reach millions of people potentially, to share a message that's not controlled by a corporation, that's not controlled by Sean Hannity or Rachel Maddow or Anderson Cooper. It's a mass communications revolution, and I think that look, a lot of people don't trust Rudy Giuliani for some of the things with regard to 9/11 and other things, but setting aside all that, I think the message that he's sharing right now is correct and important, because they're talking about this motion to dismiss the charges against the president, and I think it's absolutely imperative that his legal team do that, at least as a first step, because even if it doesn't work, if they are to proceed without doing that, they lose the opportunity to do it.
Well, it's an extension of this lunatic view on the Kavanaugh hearing that any accusations you have a right
guilt.
You have a right to believe, an obligation to believe any accusation. That's just not the American system of justice, because there are plenty of disturbed people who will make false accusations.
Oh, believe me, I know that.
Yeah, and if it's seen that they can get away with those false accusations, then more and more disturbed people will come forward. So when we think about
very crowded.
Think about impeachment, and we go back, and most people don't study history the way they need to, but when we think about the fact that the first governance document, the Articles of Confederation, did not work. They so hobbled that the president really had no ability to lead the country effectively. So America didn't do so well in the first 7 years, 1782 to 1789.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Articles of Confederation had a very weak executive. And so when the subject came up of trying to, maybe change that and let the president have more power, there were those who really feared that, and they wanted a check on the ability of the president to go hog wild. So impeachment was to be that check, and it was not taken lightly.
As it shouldn't be.
You don't impeach the president over policy differences.
Right.
It was the president. You impeach the president over high crimes and misdemeanors, which it's a pity that they didn't define it better in the Constitution at the time.
The U.S. Code had not been defined at that point, so.
Right, but they could have. Everything man-made is imperfect, and this is an imperfection that's come home to roost here. I think there's an opportunity with this trial to maybe define it. So back in the day, before 1782 in America, the penalty for stealing a small, trivial amount of money was severe. In England, it was death.
Wow.
And hence, this idea that no cruel and unusual punishment. So back in that time frame, people had a clearer understanding of what was a small crime and what was a large crime. And so the idea here was you don't remove a president unless it's a significant crime, which was defined actually as treason. Like treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Right. So what Giuliani is up to, and I think it's proper, is to lay a marker down and say, look, here's a case where a bunch of hotheads and hot dunderheads in Congress abandoned any pretense of due process in the House. Failed to give the accused, in this case the president, any right to defend himself in the initial period, any right for people who opposed the process to call witnesses at the time, failed to call material witnesses by their own admission, because now they want these witnesses forward. And they produce a document that is supposed to be impeachment, but they haven't investigated the motives of the people, of the person who remains to this day officially unnamed, because we don't know the identity in theory officially.
EC.
We don't know, we can't go and question rumors that have now come out in the press that he was at the White House before the inauguration in that time frame.
Well, we've seen pictures of him shaking Barack Obama's hand.
No, but discussing, the need to impeach Donald Trump before he even was inaugurated.
Right.
So, this is a case where if you put the shoe on the other foot, and you imagine, and it's a nightmare, imagine any one of the currently running Democrats as President of the United States, would any one of those people, if they won, want to be subjected to the process they've subjected Donald Trump to? And I think the answer is absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so the proper thing, the win-win, high percentage thing to do here, I think, is to do what Giuliani wants to do. Do a motion to dismiss, lay it out there, explain why it's so important to do this.
Yes.
Get this dismissed, and then go back over the ground, which I hope Durham is doing much of. And the ground goes way back, not just simply to 2016, but way, way back. What are the motives behind these crazy actions? Why is Schiff doing this?
Right.
Why are so many Democrats and media and academics in lockstep on the impeachment process? What are they afraid of? And I think what they're afraid of is that they've been smoking hemp when it comes to economic theory and political theory, that all wedded into this unregulated globalism, which sprouted from 1988 and really took root as the Soviet Union blew up and Central Europe went over and experimented, as it has been, in capitalism. These people have been all in for the easy life where you pay a politician $100 grand or $1 million or whatever it is for a speech or a book. The next thing you know, those politicians are giving you no-bid contracts and letting you do these international things where you can become if you're not already a billionaire, suddenly you're a billionaire and multi-billionaire. They're terrified that when the truth comes out, which I think it is coming out, as to how much money has been stolen by these thieves, that the people are going to rise up and throw a lot of incumbents, Republicans and Democrats, out of power.
Yeah, I think 2020 is going to be an unprecedented year in many ways. Rudy Giuliani, prior to his podcast, was laying out some details on an appearance on Fox and Friends, where he hinted at some of the evidence. This, I thought, was a little bit not so wise on the part of Mr. Giuliani, in that he keeps talking about evidence that he has that no one has seen, which is almost an open invitation for a Clinton Arkansas. But Mr. Giuliani is apparently going to be revealing evidence that he collected in his personal capacity as Donald Trump's lawyer, going to Ukraine. I mean, this is something that has been maligned by the likes of Rachel Maddow and others. Ukraine is a country that anyone is free to travel to, as far as I know. And if you're an attorney investigating something, I've conducted my own investigation in the course of defending myself in the lawsuits that I face, and I've discovered facts and details that I'm free to utilize in my defense, and so is Mr. Giuliani. He speaks about this prosecutor who was fired and various other Ukrainian citizens who had their visas specifically blocked by the embassy and by this ambassador, what's her name? Yanukovych, right. So here she is appearing in the Adam Schiff, show trial, being presented as just a fantastic
Joan of Arc.
Yes, this civil servant or whatever. I mean, this is a woman who was put in place in furtherance of a scheme that was born in the Obama administration, whereby Joe Biden and undoubtedly other members of the Obama administration, the Senate, were totally bilking not only the people of Ukraine, but the people of the United States, when this foreign aid money is essentially being stolen. And these are the schemes that I think that These are the schemes that they're afraid that the process of draining the swamp is going to reveal. So it just seems so transparent to me, Charles. It's disappointing the friends and former friends in the United States who can't see that and who think that what's happening to the president is appropriate. And setting aside Donald Trump, because I understand people who object to his personality or his policies or just don't like him. I just, again, anytime we witness someone, particularly someone powerful, being denied due process, having their constitutional rights violated, you know, people who were happy about what happened to Dr. Corsi or Roger Stone in terms of FBI agents busting in his place.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Even if you dislike these people, that should not be activity by the government and the FBI and the DOJ that anybody supports, because obviously if that's allowed to continue, any of us could be next. And it's a scary situation. I don't really, it's hard to fathom now in 2020. It's quite sad, Charles, when I think back to, you know, 1990, prior to 2001 and everything. I almost feel like it's a heyday that sadly is gone.
A squandered opportunity. Yeah, I think there, on the one hand, there's a bunch of people who are interested in being directed / led. And on the other hand, there are people, I think, like me and like you, who are more interested in having the freedom to do what it is that moves you at the moment, provided that what you're doing is lawful.
Right.
You know, I don't really, at my age, need to take direction from the bug-eyed bartender, AOC, or it's not Chicken Little, I think it's Salmon Little or Herring Little.
Oh, you're talking about Greta of the purple hair?
Greta.
Purple long stocking? Is it purple, her hair? Or
I guess.
I wonder what the environmental impact of that hair dye is.
Well, actually, let's walk up. That's the Royal Palace. So
let's go look at that.
Let's go pay a visit to the King.
Absolutely. Knock on the door. Hey.
It's Martin Luther King Day.
Well, that was last week. Is he home?
Hey.
There really are a huge amount of electric cars here, which is
silly scooters.
Which is interesting for a country that's so involved in the gas and oil industry. I like electric cars. I don't know. There's a lot of questions about that type of stuff, Charles. We were speaking to some people who were talking about the environmental dangers of mining the rare earth metals that are needed to create the magnets for giant windmills, and the environmental impact of lithium ion that's used in the batteries in the cars. And often these supposedly green technologies, as we've spoken about in previous episodes, green regs and scam, etc., sometimes they appear to be great ideas on the surface, but there's usually some lobbying firm or some person with a financial interest behind these green technologies that maybe is more interested in the green in their own pockets than the green on the trees.
Exactly, and I think, actually that you bring up an excellent point. There's going to be, as Michael Bloomberg has just now placed 4th in the national poll, having spent almost $200 million. I mean, he's not trying to buy the election.
He's too short to win. Nobody that much shorter than the incumbent has ever won. But, and that's coming from a short guy, Charles.
I don't think
I'm not a shortest.
But it's interesting, we're here in Oslo, which I think is one of the important cities in the C40 movement, which is a fake charity that was set up in the United States in 2010, November, I think, maybe 11, and was like every other thing that the Clintons are involved with. It was done unlawfully or not in compliance with applicable laws. It wasn't organized properly, it wasn't operated lawfully. But the Clintons were really smart, and Mike Bloomberg was near the end of umpty-ump terms and was trying to position himself, I think, for some larger role in government. So he too eagerly accepted the post of chairman of the C40 and put a fair amount of his foundation's money into this thing, which is basically like the Clinton Global Initiative. It's an excuse for mayors.
Wait a minute. Sorry to interrupt. That thing right over there, Euro sign.
That's where we started, Jason.
Well, I know, but I didn't notice that Euro sign. That might be different, because that says make yourself visible. I think it's talking about signs. The company I'm thinking about is Eurosign Card. So viewers who have been following for a while will know what that company's about. I don't think that's the same company.
That's to be careful.
Sorry,
here.
you were talking about C40
Yeah,
and Michael Bloomberg and how it might become the C4 Foundation when it blows up in his face.
Right, because he was. We have to wait here.
Yeah.
C440 is a convention or a grouping of big city mayors around the world. The idea being that they would get together in various conference locations and swap best practices on, this is the best way to have an electrical plant, this is the best way for a sewer system,
Sounds
and whatever.
like another one of these big confabs where they all just eat expensive dinners and...
Well, and an excuse for the vendors to meet all these mayors who, generally speaking, laws on buying this big pieces of capital equipment are strict.
Right.
And maybe they're not enforced properly, but it's a golden opportunity for GE and Siemens and other vendors to
Bribe
cities.
people.
Yeah, to get in and, under the tent and meet the mayor and their staff, where the press is probably screened. And
undoubtedly.
On top of which, the original application stated that the key implementing partner for C40 was going to be the Clinton Climate Initiative.
Oh boy.
Something that doesn't exist.
Huh.
So I think Mike is never going to win, but he's got to be called to task for his willingness to embrace C40, for his foundation's support financially of C40, and for the fact that he's a good guy when it comes to philanthropy. Generally speaking, he's given billions away very effectively, but he should be called to account for his participation in C40, and sadly, so should Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson was one of the creators of it.
Right.
So it'll be in the news.
Right. Well, but you're very positive on Boris Johnson with the Brexit moves that he's making.
I think he's funny as well.
He's got the same haircut as Donald Trump,
like
essentially.
Distant cousin of Donald Trump. He's in a very... I like politicians who are prepared to make bold moves in positive directions.
I like it that he threw out Nicholas Soames, or that caused Nicholas Soames to leave Parliament or whatever. That definitely seemed like a move in the right direction. People who follow David Hawkins and his Discovery CSI program on Patreon are going to be familiar with Nicholas Soames and all of the crazy things he seems to be involved in, with Serco, his brother,
right,
being the chairman of it now. So this is the palace.
Yeah, well, let's not get too much closer, I think.
Why? People are going right up to it.
Not with cameras or not.
Oh, come on. It's the palace.
All right, so...
snipers will take us out if they don't like it.
So the interesting thing here, and I'm glad we're here, is that the Crown Prince of Norway, who's a guy in his, I guess, 40s, has made a gigantic error of judgment.
What was that again?
And that is that he has gotten together with this brigand fraudster, John Hope Bryant.
Oh, right.
To get involved with something called...
The marijuana...
the guy who's like Up in Smoke Bryant, who's... he's gotten together with him in something called Global Dignity, which is a charity that is, I think, should be named Global Indignity, because it's so poorly organized and illegally operating. And we've been trying to warn...
Should we go look at that horse?
Sure. That's no way to refer to it, baby.
I mean the one up there.
Oh. So we've been trying to warn the Crown Prince and the government of Norway that this is coming like a freight train. That John Hope Bryant has been under investigation, as he should have been, for years.
How do we know that he's under investigation?
I don't want to say.
Okay, got it.
But he's... He should be under investigation, because I've looked through his paperwork, and as we've done several shows on him,
yeah,
he is
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood, yeah. His original charity was called Operation Hope Los Angeles,
right,
or Los Angeles Operation Hope. And last I checked, Manhattan is not in Los Angeles.
No.
So how did he get involved in 2001 or 2 with Bill Clinton? And the Clinton Foundation doing work in Harlem. Makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't know. So, Charles, who is this person on the horse?
He's definitely somebody on a high horse.
Right. Let's see, maybe this is some famous previous king or something?
Yeah.
It's quite nice here right now.
Reminds me a lot of the house I used to have.
A little smaller, right?
No, it's bigger. Says, is that Bette Midler?
Yes, Bette Midler. Well, the horse might be.
Yeah, there is a guy in a guard booth there.
Oh yeah, he kind of looks like a beef eater from
There's
here.
another guy in a guard booth.
Interesting hat.
Yeah. Maybe we walk
Yeah.
back. Oh, here, this is why.
What?
Changing in the guard.
Oh, wow. We're here at perfect timing. Let's take a look.
Let's hope they don't.
Ah, this has
Have
got to
an
be a
issue.
tourist attraction, right?
Changing of the herring.
It's interesting for people to see. Oop,
Doesn't seem to be
it's not that loud.
herring. A lot of them. It's amazing you can get this close.
They probably have guns if you do. They don't like these kids getting that close.
A lot of people.
Yeah. That thing seems to make it harder to see, doesn't it? It's not a very strategic uniform.
Well, it's one of these things like Norway is left leaning and you can't look to your right. For that. That's the whole idea behind it. Just stay here. They look pretty cold.
Hmm.
It'd be pretty funny if they now would break out in like cowboy music, square dancing.
Square dance. You look pretty young.
And then they go back inside and have some glue wine.
What's that?
They're going back inside to get some hot cider or something.
Well, you know, that's an interesting and unique thing for people to see that you might not normally get
Right.
on every episode of Sunday with Charles.
Gonna have to get you one of those hats, Jason.
Yeah, I don't know if that's my style really, but
Good.
well, there
Look,
you go.
there's the city out
Little
beneath our
palace
feet.
visit, Charles.
Very nice.
Oh, you can stand on this side. I think it's better. So, I don't know. You want to knock on the door and see if we can have a word with the king?
We'll see him early next week. I
Right.
think. Stop by.
So, what the king of Norway is not somebody that you hear really about too much in the United States. What does he do?
Basically a ceremonial figure, I think. You can just go down that one.
Okay.
He's by design a ceremonial figure. He has, I believe, no real power.
Uh huh. Does
But,
he hang out with the Queen of England or anything like that?
Yeah, all those royals are all related,
Huh.
and they do hang out together.
Then that doesn't really.
Yeah, Queen Elizabeth's been having not such a great year.
Yeah, well, she's got some bums for sons.
Yeah, multiple bums.
I don't understand how the British people put up with that royal family. So what's going to happen now with Harry and Meghan, Charles? I overheard you saying that you felt that some of the things that Harry was talking about might be Clinton/Obama-esque in what they're
Yeah.
attempting to do. And wasn't Frank Giustra providing them with a residence in Canada, and the people of Canada were getting annoyed to have to foot the bill?
That turns out to possibly being fake news. I think
Ah.
Schuster said that wasn't true.
Oh.
But no, I think we want to go, if we're going back, we want to go that way
Sure.
to the train station.
Well, that's good if that's, not true.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, he's hung out, Harry has, with Obama, and of course Meghan Markle is well connected in Hollywood, and the theory was they're going to follow the route. They'll have a charity, a new charity, and she'll do movie stuff.
I don't know that I ever really heard of Meghan Markle before she married him. What movies has she been in?
Okay, the show Suits.
Never watched that.
It's really funny.
Huh.
It's about a corrupt law firm and
Huh.
all the inveigling back and forth. But I think she's been in other better known things. But the idea was that she would do her Hollywood stuff. He would run a charity together with her. They get book deals. Maybe they get a Netflix deal. And they're young, so they have decades ahead of them to do this kind of stuff.
Right.
And again, that's something that I would caution them against. I mean, you should not. You want to do entertainment, do that. And I'm sure they can get a bunch of roles for Meghan.
Yeah, I
begging
saw
for her.
a video where Harry was trying to convince Bob Iger to hire her for some Disney movie or something.
That does seem a little bit demeaning. You're sitting there, I say, could you give my
Yeah,
wife, the princess,
it felt
a voiceover?
super awkward.
Well, what you going to do next? Advertise, for My Pillow?
I don't know. It was weird. Yeah, for sure.
I've got the Markle Sparkle.
Yeah. Bob Iger didn't seem too moved by the pitch, but we'll see what happens. Well, so later. Well, let's see. So this is being pre-recorded
Right.
before we'll put it up because of
Logistics.
streaming issues and mobile data issues. But so we're going to have some arguments from the defense in the
Moments,
impeachment.
yeah.
Yes, very soon. So maybe what we'll do is head back and watch that and then have some additional commentary after we've seen that.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah?
Jesse.
So maybe we cut this right now and we'll just kind of head back.
Sounds good.
Anything else interesting here we want to see?
A lot of gray, Jason. It's a lot of gray.
Yeah. All right, Charles. So that's for now. We'll say adieu and return. I don't know how you say that in Norwegian, but exactly. People get the idea. I'll see everybody in a little bit. Well, it was a nice little tour of the city, and now we've had some time to return and watch the president's defense team present their opening statements. What did you think about that, Charles?
I thought it was a very well considered defense. I thought the fact that they took 2 hours, or really less than 2 hours, to demolish 24 hours of ranting and raving and rambling from the House managers was excellent on the one hand, and sad on the other hand that this mess is allowed to reach the point that it's reached. I mean, I think that the framers never imagined that people in the House would be as irresponsible as Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff and Nadler have been to concoct really a fake impeachment process. There's never been a full House vote on impeachment, and so this was conducted rather than through the Judiciary Committee under penalty of subpoena, which could only be, a real subpoena can only be put out, I'm told, if you have a House vote first to formally authorize the process, which they never did.
Right. This was one of the points that I should have had the names of the president's lawyers up, but they all did an excellent job. I agree with you completely. The fact that it only took 2 hours, it tells us a lot, because here we have Adam Schiff telling a story, weaving a tale. All the people that are praising him are talking about how it was emotional, but this shouldn't be about emotion. It should be about facts. So these guys were able to lay out the facts very quickly. And I've been talking about the concept of a motion to dismiss from the very beginning on the basis that they've failed to allege a crime. But Trump's lawyers brought up another basis, which, as you point out, is that the process is, essentially fruit of the poison tree. Without that House vote, they were never authorized to do this impeachment. So it's two grounds for a motion to dismiss.
Right. And really, when you think about it, back in 1776 timeframe, England had been beset for decades by what were then called factions, the ancient equivalent of modern parties. And I don't think people assumed, back then the framers assumed, that parties would grow to be such a phenomenon as they are in this country, where politicians swear an oath of office, and then meanwhile, the second they're in office, instead of preserving, defending the Constitution of the United States and the law of the land, what they're really trying to do is punish their political opponents, whether they're in parties or independents or in a different faction of the party, and reward their cronies. And there needs to be, I think, a reassessment, a realignment of this whole process. And actually, Nancy and Schiff and Nadler and that crew who are in league with the academia, apparently 95, for every one Republican candidate supported by a college professor, 95 Democrats are supported by college professors. So you have academia lending this patina of authenticity to a process which is a fake process.
Right.
Then you have the fake news media, again, piling on and selling a narrative to the gullible public that this is an authentic process, when in fact it isn't. And in the end, if there is any justice out there looking down on this planet, I think what this will do is going to be a gigantic bomb against Nadler and Lawfare and Pelosi and Schiff. And I don't think it's just enough for Trump to win an acquittal. I think there have to be serious consequences here, much like when a man or a woman falsely accuses another of rape, and you take it seriously as you should, and then you discover, as Jesse Smollett, that it's a fake accusation.
Right.
There have to be serious penalties, because we see too many people are attention seekers, and they're willing to go out and say anything to get on the air perpetually, as Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler and Nancy Pelosi sadly do.
And you led with saying that the framers never anticipated that some party would be irresponsible. I think that's possibly too generous. This goes beyond irresponsible. This is deliberate, malicious intent, where they're literally gaslighting the entire world. I mean, Schiff was up there, as you said, I mean, the 24 hours, why was that necessary? There's just generating tons of television content, whereas if it were true what they were saying, it should be a short, concise summary of the facts delivered that can then be deliberated upon. But you know, there's a bit of a debate right now. I saw Ted Cruz talking about how he opposes the concept of a motion to dismiss and feels that there should be witnesses and ultimately an acquittal. I totally disagree with that. I think now that the president's lawyers have raised this second set of grounds for the motion to dismiss, it absolutely must be exercised, because again, the public needs to understand that the motion to dismiss is not Trump saying, oh, this is a fake process and using his presidential power to suppress it. This is the way the law works. You can't make up fake crap and try and, you know, get somebody impeached or fired or imprisoned or sued or whatever it is. We really need to clamp down on the whole legal process in this country, and Adam Schiff is an absolutely horrible representative of the legal community. And if this is what Harvard Law School is producing, shut that damn place down too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think about the equities here and the second order consequences of what might happen here. Here we have a system that has grown so big, we're spending $6.5 trillion all in on government in the U.S. per year. Any meeting with government, as you know, we have learned about ourselves, any meeting with government officials involves multiple other people in the room. Who knows what those people are doing, what they might ultimately complain about. And what you've done here with this impeachment process is you've allowed the whistleblower whose name cannot be used, and we won't use it, but this is a young punk who should not have been anywhere near the process, who is a naked partisan, pro-Obama, pro-Brennan person, if it's the person that I believe it is. And this person decided to sink Donald Trump prior to the inauguration.
Notice how he's been shuffled under the carpet quite conveniently as well. It's
but that's just unacceptable. I mean, if it were you or me, and you had somebody who could accuse us anonymously of things, and get to a level where you could lose your mark in history, which is really what they're trying to do here. That you can't send the message that that's okay, because there are too many of these anonymous whistleblowers out there, and you're just going to cripple the ability of a president, of a cabinet leader, of maybe even a senator or a House member to get anything done if they have to worry about every single little person in the room can then go over. If they wake up like Greta Thunberg, having eaten a bad vegan meal or whatever, and the wrong side of the futon,
the wrong side of the sailboat,
right? Just turn blue in the face and accuse you of all this different
blue in the hair,
exactly, purple in the hair, and you can't send a message out to the world that this is the way the U.S. government and other governments are going to work. You have to say, wait a minute, impeachment is meant to be, short of treason, is meant to be one of the highest offenses under our law.
Right.
And if you're going to go down the track of triggering an impeachment inquiry with attendant distraction, you should have to identify yourself, and somebody should be, other than a naked partisan, should be saying, no, wait a minute, what are your motives here? Who are you anyway? How did you come to know this? How did this complaint? And we've had none of that stress testing yet. And here we are in a trial, in a second trial.
Yeah, and I mean, it's fundamentally un-American what's going on right now. The fact that whoever it is that's being accused can't confront the accusers. Right. All of these, closed-door testimonies that generated, so-called evidence. I thought another strong move the president's lawyers made was to show the testimony that Adam Schiff chose to not include. Right. The omissions were damning to their case. I mean, there were so many points, and in such a short period of time, without emotion. The president's lawyers presented the case very effectively, I thought. Now, I heard this morning on a podcast or a radio interview, so Brad Parscale is Donald Trump's, is he the campaign manager? Yeah. He gave a great presentation, and he said that so far every metric that they view, this is helping President Trump's reelection.
Well, of course it will.
Yeah.
Of course it will. Because, I mean, the dynamic, and this in time will be written about, I think, in history books, that it used to be we were just Republicans or Democrats. You might have liberal Republicans, but in the main, a Republican was a conservative economic party and pro, free speech and freedom to act responsibly, whereas the Democratic Party was more socialist leaning, not really socialist, but pro-regulatory state, big state stuff. And what I think the politicians in both parties have missed is that over the course of decades of each party sort of resembling the other one, the voting public has stayed back and has not participated in the process all that much, right up until 2016 when they tried to put Bernie in. But of course, the corrupt elements, the Clinton elements of the Democratic Party working with Obama were able to stuff Bernie, but they couldn't stuff Trump, much as they tried. And people watched that, people like me included. I had a good reason not to vote, but because I didn't want to appear in that crucial election, 2015, 2016. I didn't want the Clintons to be able to say I was doing all this stuff about the Clinton Foundation just to help Trump or just because I disliked Clinton. It was no, I was trying to expose, and we are now trying to expose, the largest set of unprosecuted charity frauds in history. So in 16, though, a lot of people fairly looked at Trump and said, he's a big talker, full of bluster, he can be very entertaining, but he's never run anything as big as the President of the United States of America. And while he's been able to do a good job, supposedly, to hear him tell it, with a family firm, and a family firm, the Donald J. Trump is the man at the Trump Organization, and nobody's going to mess with him, whereas that's not what happens when you're President of the United States. So back in that election, I think quite a few people held back, but still the turnout got to be pretty big, and the turnout among independents rose. I think this could be a wave election in 2020 where you see people like me and others, now having watched Donald Trump for a long period of time, produce against the odds that were so high, and the fight was so high from the beginning, from before the get-go, before the inauguration, they were going after him. You see him take unrelenting shit, basically across the media, across shift around the world. Nonetheless, he gets his historic accomplishments done, doing things that other presidents have never talked about doing, but said it was too difficult. He gets them done. We've got, people are going to look at that and say, you know what? We need to give this person the ability to continue down this great track that's producing record low unemployment, record high job opportunities, increasing wages, increasing job security, people changing the structure that was impeding the growth of our great economy by making it much more interesting for foreign companies and U.S. subsidiaries of operating abroad to return their productive activities inside our borders. I think on the one hand, he's doing things that position the United States to do very well, irrespective of what the rest of the world is doing. And it's almost like, from an economic standpoint and a strategic perspective, he's doing the right things, and our rivals around the world are doing the wrong things. So the gap between the United States and, say, Germany or France or China, as he would say, China, is widening and widening and widening. And so when you look as a risk taker, as an investor, you look at that and you say, my gains inside the U.S. are going to be greater because things are really moving in the right direction here in terms of people are going to buy stuff that I might sell them. And then relative to Germany, of course I want to take money out of Germany and put it in the U.S., take it out of China, put it in the U.S. So, I mean, if he's allowed to make it to and past the finish line this year, it's going to be a monumental set of changes. And there must be a reckoning for the people who, like the Clintons. There's this new documentary out in Sundance, and the snippets are coming out. I will not watch it because I don't like to throw up. But the snippets, one snippet that's all over the news today is that supposedly Obama called Kaine, Clinton's VP candidate, and as much, the conversation was that Obama said, look, this is not an ordinary election. Trump is a fascist, and we've got to do everything we can to stop him.
Wow.
And you know, you don't get to make those wild claims as President of the United States. I mean, Trump is certainly not a fascist. And if anybody behaved in a extra-legal way,
yes,
it was Barack Obama, drone striking Americans, having his Justice Department go after numerous journalists more than any
really
others.
Terrible.
You know, and he's going to describe Donald Trump as a fascist?
I think there needs to be, you were talking about a reckoning, there needs to be a reckoning for Barack Obama. It's really sickening what's going on, and I hope that even people who maybe initially did not like President Trump, in light of what's going on with this impeachment, hopefully their eyes will be open. I mean, you know, I think you and I have spoken several times about the fact that I was initially, you know, for Bernie Sanders.
That's it, I'm leaving.
Well, I mean, I realized that I wasn't well informed at that time, but also when Bernie was eliminated and the choice became between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, I began to examine all these allegations in the press against the president, and I just found them all to be, you know, in the best cases, highly exaggerated, and in the worst cases, totally false. And as I was watching Adam Schiff, I didn't watch all 24 hours of the, you know, whole nonsense, but select clips, of course. He's doing the exact same things that the social engineers who've been attacking me are doing. He's highlighting these points that are totally false that he's trying to get over the plate, and he's minimizing. There were so many times that he referred to the concept of investigating corruption in Ukraine and Hunter Biden's links to his company Burisma. He referred to that as a sham investigation, which it is obviously not. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence that something improper went on there, and to what degree is what needs to be investigated. So they're clearly trying to keep that off the table. And another point that Ted Cruz raised was that, you know, having these witnesses would allow this to all air out. I disagree with all of that, and I hope that our viewers will carefully consider everything that they hear from everyone, including you and I, but particularly just because someone says they're a Republican or just because Devin Nunes does something that helps the president doesn't necessarily cause me to entirely trust that person, because again, going back to this social engineering campaign against me, there have been a multitude of people who have been presented to me as allies, as friends, as people who are having information or doing things that could ostensibly help me, who ultimately in a relatively short period of time have revealed their true purpose to be extremely damaging. So I do not agree that we need to have Hunter Biden as a witness in this matter. Donald Trump is the president of the United States and could launch an investigation into anything at any time. He could certainly have the Department of Justice continue investigating his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who I do not always agree with and have a lot of questions about with regard to 9/11, I think is doing a tremendous job. He had a podcast I think we might have spoken about briefly, where he's talking about all the evidence that he raised, and again, everyone is saying, well, what's Rudy Giuliani doing running around Ukraine? You and I could go to Ukraine and investigate any crime that happened there that we want.
We're here in Norway.
Right, exactly. So as American citizens, we're free to travel to countries, I guess not Cuba, or I don't know, can you go to Cuba now? I think they changed that.
They changed
yeah.
it, right.
But I mean, you're free to go to a country, interview people, ask them questions, find out whatever you want to find out.
Exactly. Exactly. And I do think here what we should be thinking about beyond just the day-to-day minutiae of the trial and its significance, I think it's highly likely he'll be acquitted. What we really should be thinking about is what would animate so many people to try to stuff Trump. I mean, from the very beginning, what are they so afraid of? And
right.
It's clear that a large number of people, and they're Bush people, and obviously Clinton people, and Obama people, both Bush administrations, a large number of people, I think, are trying to cover up the business model for charity and fraud and corruption that has become the norm, sadly, since about 1988 and 89, particularly involving any sort of charity that has international operations, because these charities are perfect vehicles, as we've seen now through, this is our 203rd episode, second international episode. But I think it's in part that monies are raised in the name of charity and then diverted for political campaigns, for personal enrichment. It happens in both parties. It's been going on a long time. Things are commingled. charities are officed in the same place as political campaigns and personal consulting firms and investment firms and this and that. And it's become a convenient way for the politically connected to make money against competitors who aren't, quote, smart enough to realize that there's a whole lot of corruption going on. So I think on the Good News Department, we've been together now on this project. This is our 203rd video, second international one. In October, we were late September, early October, we were in Bosnia. Now we're here in Norway, and the folks in Norway are disproportionately per capita big givers to aid projects, and they've been doing it. Most people don't know Norway today is a rich country, if not one of the richest in the world per capita. It wasn't rich until oil and gas were found.
When was that?
I want to say 60s, 70s.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and there were periods. The reason there are a large number of Norwegian Americans is that at different points in time there was famine in Norway decades ago in the 1800s and 1900s. So many Norwegians fled. I mean, there was nothing. What can you do? If you could fish, you could hike, you could, I don't know, swim.
So there's a large number of people walking around who still remember when the country was not as financially.
Oh, sure.
And they already are talking about ending the oil and gas industry here.
That would be Salmon Little, Greta Thunberg or whatever Herring Little, walking around saying, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. But so back on, people are starting here in Norway, of all places, and we heard recently that Boris Johnson, in the last 24 hours or so, the new Prime Minister of England, who is negotiated and will now have Brexit across the line, that's going to happen imminently. He has called and demanded that there be a re-examination of the way in which England gives out approximately, call it $18 billion a year.
Yeah.
Norway gives about $3.4 billion a year. The United States gives, I forget how much, but I think it's more than $20 billion per year. And then if you count elements of our other activities, which I think are quasi-charitable, it's probably in the 30, 40, 50 a year. Countries rightfully are now going to start thinking carefully about what the hell did we do with all this money, and did it actually help people in the intended recipients in the countries, the poor countries around the world. The evidence is not in for that. When we look in Norway's case, we have a list of projects that have been funded. It's not the whole list yet, but we look through them. Norway was funding projects in the Caribbean. Now, there are poor people in the Caribbean, but compared to Africa, most of the people, including the poor people in the Caribbean, are rich compared to people living in Africa where there are no roads, no electricity, no doctors, no hospitals, and these are vast countries. So to get, you've got people scattered in the rural areas, not concentrated in the cities. Those people really are poor, and if we want to help them economically, if that's something we should do, we should actually try to help them, not see that the money disappears, and worse, not find out that the money may have, instead of going to those people, gone to politicians in the countries who approved the aid, or politicians in other countries like the United States who could help their sons and daughters. I mean, that's not a game that I think people who are all in for socialism and equality here in Norway are happy about. And it goes back to my theory about the 15-16 campaign. One unifying theme, I would hope, across the stark political divide is people should be, in both parties and across the divide, should be against corruption.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how you can stand up and say, I'm the party of corruption, unless you're Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's what causes me to say, I don't understand how people can say, no, you can't even investigate Hunter Biden. The fact that you would suggest that is like, it's a sham. It's like, well, what? Right. This is a guy who's had drug problems his whole entire life. Is anybody really surprised that he would be involved in some sort of illegal operation? Can I take you for a minute, Charles, back to Mr. Giuliani, because there's been a lot of talk today about this tape that's been released where apparently Lev Parnas is secretly recording the president saying that he wants to fire Yanukovych, which, I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to hear the tape, but first of all, isn't it problematic to have somebody secretly recording the president? I'm not sure where he is when this recording is being made, but he basically is just saying, Parnas or someone.
Well, this is really interesting because we had gotten a
sorry, we don't want that. Basically, we've got Parnas or someone telling Trump that the ambassador is there in Ukraine telling everybody, don't pay attention to the president, he's going to get impeached, well before this impeachment began. So first of all, that's like an employee bad-mouthing the boss, totally grounds for firing her, totally appropriate. Secondarily, it's suggestive that she has some foreknowledge of this actual sham, which is the Adam Schiff, Gerald Nadler, Nancy Pelosi, Schumer-driven impeachment.
Well, I think that goes back to the period that Durham is investigating. I mean, when I think back, and I was really enmeshed in, you know, the moment-to-moment WikiLeaks drops and all the media appearances that I had leading through and after the election, but I remember vividly that what happened was that that Hillary did not show up. Well, one tell for me right before the election is when they canceled the fireworks. The Grucci fireworks, because those are very expensive, and those people were going to get paid anyway. So, because of how powerful the fireworks.
It'd be funny if she blew them up and then tried to return them.
That's right. It's basically what her campaign was. It was a total dud. But anyway, I sensed that there was the momentum was going Trump's way, with that tell and with the fact that she didn't campaign in the final weeks the way she should have in the key swing states, and her reliance on celebrities. It just really fell flat for me. So I thought Trump was going to win. Then she didn't show up on election night to concede, and the next day she showed up wearing that purple resistance outfit with Bill Clinton in the purple tie. To me, it was just too choreographed, and that, you know, I think well before election day, though people in the Clinton camp didn't want probably to go down a track of thinking, what do we do if we lose? Some people had done that damage control thinking, and you remember it was a nonstop assault against Trump from the very moment that he won. Let's get the faithless electors not to vote for him. Let's get recount challenge. Let's do this. Let's do that. You know, they were in high anti-Trump mode. I don't think a president has been that attacked, president-elect that attacked as Donald Trump was in that period between Election Day and January 20th, 2017. So one needs to go back and say, well, how far back? I mean, when I look at this, if we want to investigate obstructing an election or obstructing the will of the people, I would start with well before February 1st, 2013, when Hillary Clinton left, was in the Secretary of State, but that day she leaves. You know, who authorized Hillary Clinton to keep all of the emails that were created or received during her period as Secretary of State outside of a government-safe place and in Chappaqua? That's really amazing that nobody people let her do that for that long. And then as she's walking out the door, so yeah, you can keep all that stuff. These are records.
Better yet, just destroy it.
Yeah, destroy what might be incriminating, and that they would then go through this long process and wait till the midterm elections of 2014. And only after the midterm elections happened would her lawyers turn over on December 5th, I think it was, 2014, allegedly all of the emails. But she's allowed to remove those that are personal or wedding and yoga related. And nobody raised a hue and cry before then. It took a while. There was no Inspector General in the State Department. And she's now laying the groundwork to mount the second presidential effort. How much of the property that had been created during her tenure as Secretary of State was used to mine for campaign contributions, to feather the family's nest, to get Chelsea more no-show jobs, and Bill more no-content speeches, and Hillary
dumb books with what's his name, Patterson.
Exactly. I mean, how much government property was used in that illegal way, those illegal ways? And then what about this whole idea of the Democratic Party agreeing to the terms they agreed to in the conduct of the primary contests and allowing Hillary Clinton to, I think, fundraise illegally? What was the role of this Mark Elias at Perkins Coie representing Hillary Clinton? Why aren't Democrats more upset about what was going on with Bernie Sanders and how his campaign was stuffed, and others, how Hillary got the debate questions in advance? I mean, why aren't Democrats really ripshit about that? I know I would be if I were a Democrat. And
well, they seem to be brain dead.
Right. And so, you go through, so by the time you get to November of 2016, there is a lot of criminality that's been covered up. The Clinton Foundation, the Obama Foundation, all these speeches, all these crooked Clinton deals and Bush deals and book deals and movie deals and all that kind of stuff. And what was the role of Comey, and what was the role of Mueller, and what was the role of Brennan and Clapper and these other people in monetizing their government service for the benefit of the deep state. You know,
Yeah.
and these are things that I think really need to be investigated. It's like you have a house that you think has just got paint coming off, you know, the first floor wall, and in reality what's wrong is the foundation is rotten, the roof is blown off. You don't go to that house and say, well, I think I'll just touch up the paint. I mean, you've got to might have to tear it down and start from the beginning. Similarly, I think, you know, I get comments from different people when I go on around media or foreign media, and they fairly point out, you know, the United States has intervened in many, many nations since 1945. Many of those interventions have not worked so well.
I think maybe all.
Yeah, and so why isn't it time to have a belt and suspenders look at the national security apparatus? Is it defending the United States interests, advancing the United States interests, or not? And if not, who is responsible for these horrible mistakes and misdeeds? And why shouldn't people like Brennan and others be severely put under the microscope and, if necessary, prosecuted, convicted, and incarcerated, suffering not only the loss of their freedom to roam around, but the loss of significant amounts of money, illegally gained?
Yeah, it's just dealing with something here. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's amazing, Charles. The people that you're talking about, of course, are the same people who want to see this impeachment happen, and I think are probably responsible for it, to tell you the truth. But you know, I can't get past this this Lev Parnas thing, because it's you know, this video that he's made. It really seems like, you know, I've spoken about operational plants in the lawsuits against me, and even in the shows that I've done. It feels very much like that's what Lev Parnas was doing. He's there giving this information. I mean, it feels like this is a very complicated setup with people who are being put in position to frame Trump. And I mean, even now, CNN is there saying that this Parnas recording shows Trump speaking with the indicted businessman who Trump claims he didn't know. So, I mean, how many people does Donald Trump meet? He might not have even known the guy's name. I mean, they've got pictures of him with him together, but it's not like this is somebody that Trump knows. And even the way this is worded, okay, Parnas recording shows Trump talking with indicted businessman. They're not telling you that the indicted businessman is Parnas.
Right.
So on the one hand, CNN is using him as a trusted source of this piece of evidence, but on the other hand, they know that he's been indicted and he's a criminal, essentially.
Yeah, my understanding is that, I've never done this, but my understanding is that when you go to meet somebody like the president or whatever, you don't go in there with your phone.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not sure exactly what the circumstances were under which they met, but it looks like he's at some kind of public event. I mean, you know, I've been to Trump events where I have a camera, but never met him. It's a strange thing. It just feels very much like a setup. And you know, CNN, they're just not letting up, Charles. They just.
Well, I think on the subject of Ukraine, the subject of, you know, our bruised relations with Russia, this is a big subject. I mean, this should go back to the fall of the Berlin Wall, and then the subsequent breakup of the Soviet Union in '91, and then the changes throughout Central Europe and the former Soviet republics. There's been a long period where American academics, Western academics, have sold the former states on this new theory of unrestricted or unregulated globalism. Hasn't worked very well for a lot of the populations in these countries, has worked supremely well for the oligarchs that emerged. And when you try to look at this crazy quilt of people who are in Ukraine and in Russia, you have to be very careful as to, it's not a case of you know, anti-Trump people are good or bad or whatever. I mean, there are straight up stone cold thugs operating across these countries and in our country. And people were trying to grab for whatever easy gold was lying around in Ukraine, in Russia. There was a mad dash in 2009 under Hillary and Obama at Skolkovo to, in theory, come up with these projects where Silicon Valley would be replicated in the Soviet Union, and that went horribly wrong. Remember there was a great friction when Russia invaded Georgia in 2008, right before the Olympics in China. And you know, so there was that was problematic for the Bush administration. Didn't think that was good, and Obama rushed to basically set with Hillary a restate, which actually
the reset,
which actually
she called the bad deal or whatever it was.
Well, I think the translation was overcharge or something like that. Instead of reset.
She bought the wrong easy button from Staples, apparently.
Rushing for
but talk about the opposite of diplomacy, and there's that great picture of her with Lavrov, right? I think that's who it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So Russian relations seem to be going. Really warming, and then we had the Maidan Square incident in Ukraine, and what was really going on there? We've had, you know, a number of these staged incidents where there's a complex nest of competing interests inside Ukraine. Who was doing their best to, you know, throw a monkey wrench into relations between Russia and the United States? Who inside Ukraine benefited? Who did not? Who was punished or lost? So, and you know, when you look at this and you say, well, it's either settled theory that the Bidens, there's nothing to see there, or how could you possibly want to look? Of course we have to look. You know, we have, thanks to the Democrats, thanks to Hillary Clinton and this Russia, you know, we have set back Russian relations horribly. I mean, to me, it's amazing that Russia's been so patient,
right?
In the way they're demonized constantly by our mainstream press and academia and all the know-it-alls.
Yeah. Well, even that dope Angel Urania is maligning you for appearing on. I mean, let's say you had a job on a French news network. Would someone say, "Oh, Charles is," or BBC?
Probably.
I mean, but whatever it is, it's.
Well, and that one's funny that I brought that up. Actually, I was talking to Katya Blanova, who's the person with whom I've done over 100 media interviews. And we discussed it. I explained what happened, and I said, listen, I took the view that rather than having nothing come into the Russian you know, media of American opinion about what was going on, that it would be a good thing for me to speak, air my views, if they were distributed fairly in the media. And I can tell you, in every single one that I've done, I mean, basically I get questions from her, I give my answers. Oftentimes I give her more material than she can use. She then edits it down, but not once has she or has any Russian media entity shaped my narrative. In other words, taken what I've said in English, and I intended to say I like something and have it come out that I dislike something, whatever. They're very fair, ask great questions, frankly. And you know, Angel Urena should stick to making travel reservations, because that's about all he's good for.
Well, you can hang up the phone on me. He was quite effective in that. Well, Charles, there's some sort of strange pulsing happening. I don't know if it's the lights here or the electricity or what, but I think this might be a good time, and it's getting dark outside. So perhaps we'll wrap it up now, and we'll be back next, Wednesday. We'll have another episode of Closing In, and this has been another really great international trip. Unfortunately, a lot of what we were doing here can't yet be spoken about or certainly televised, but
and thanks to our friends here in Norway.
Absolutely.
Thinking of one, we don't want to mention names, but there's one person who's been especially helpful to us.
Tremendous,
here.
Yes.
Through that person, we made some new friends, very powerful friends, and I would not be resting all that comfortably if I were Angel Urena or people living in Chappaqua, or even, for that matter, Barack Obama, thinking that you're going to get away with covering this corruption up forever, because that's not going to happen.
Right, and you know, one more thing I want to say while we're here in Norway is that I was caused to remember that interview with, I think it was George Stupidopoulos talking to President Trump in his Oval Office, where Trump said something about Norway, right?
That's right.
People can go back and watch this interview, so perhaps the president is watching Sunday with Charles, and I remain convinced that the camera operators or post-production people at CNN, ABC, whatever, I think they're tweaking the saturation of their cameras or their videos of President Trump to make his makeup look particularly bad, which, as much as I like President Trump, I wish he would change that. I was thinking earlier today, Charles, I certainly don't agree with everything that he's done. Nobody's perfect. I do think Donald Trump is the best president of my lifetime.
Yeah, he's certainly, so far, he's done remarkable things against determined opposition. So with that, Jason, thanks so much. And I hope people enjoy the views of Oslo.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to remind people that, you know, I'm no longer able to advertise these types of adventures in advance, or, you know, at one time I was sort of asking the audience if they felt I should go here or there, and giving people an opportunity to financially sponsor such endeavors. But social engineers have sabotaged that effort. If people recall, when I went to Oxford, very malicious individuals contacted the school, told them lies that endangered the trip. So there was an encounter yesterday that I don't want to discuss, but I have no idea what's going on with that. We can talk in a future show about this Clearview facial recognition application that's causing some concern for law enforcement. But I do want to remind people that if they enjoy these types of adventures, if they enjoy the show, I hope they'll become sponsors by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Really need your support to keep the shows going. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a great night.